Today you'll hear about a case that will surely leave you shaken. Not only because of the paranormal aspect, which is a lot, but also because of everything that happened altogether. This is going to leave you speechless, so I hope you enjoy this case until the end. Remember, below is the number where you can send your audio experiences. Friends, let's not waste time and start this new paranormal story now. I want to tell you a story that left a very deep mark on me, one that to this day, November 2025, I still haven't been able to overcome. And I worked on it with psychologists, doctors, alternative therapies, which although they helped me a lot, couldn't unlock that memory that hurts me so much. So you understand, my old man ended his life in front of me when I was only 13 years old. The impact isn't just from what I saw, though I saw everything, but also because he said he made that decision to protect me. Because if it wasn't him, it had to be me. The most important thing in this story is that even though he did this, my life and my family's life changed radically from that moment on. I don't have a clear memory of when it all started because honestly, a lot of things happened. But my mom and my older sister were the ones who told me about those early beginnings. When my mom was pregnant with me, I'm an adult now, I'm 33 years old, and I can talk about this with a bit more composure. I insist that I can't get over it because this guilt I carry inside doesn't go away with anything. It's something horrible, but I somehow learned to live with it. It turns out that when my mom got pregnant with me, there were a series of complications from the very beginning that put my growth at risk and of course also my birth. Keep in mind that she had previously lost 2 pregnancies, so the fear was enormous. And thanks to him, they desperately arrived at a place, making a very serious mistake. According to what my mom told many times my dad through a coworker, he worked almost his whole life at Banco Provincia. He got in touch with a man from Corrientes who could guarantee my birth. He wasn't involved in healthcare, he was more of a healer, witch, or magician. It's impossible to know now, since we don't know who he was. He probably isn't even in this world anymore. My old man was so convinced that he traveled to Corrientes to visit him and ask him please to do something, anything, but to make the birth happen. My mom, on the other hand, didn't agree. She never liked those things about healers or people who claim to know something that can't be proven, and that includes religion too. So right away, she told him she had no intention of seeing him, and that fate would decide if the baby, meaning me, should be born or not. As you can see, I was born, but it came at a high cost. My dad traveled alone to meet this man after speaking with him on the phone, and one weekend he went straight to Corrientes by car. On Sunday afternoon, he returned happy, my mom said, because everything was solved. Even though my birth fixed one problem, another issue got turned upside down. Our family as such would be destined to suffer in many ways, from fights, accidents, betrayals, and even something horrible, paranormal activity. Because an entity was with us for many years, just like you heard, and I ask you to pay close attention to everything that happened. As I mentioned, I don't recall the beginning, but I do have a clear childhood memory. Since I was 5 or 6 years old, I started to realize that I wasn't safe in my own house. The complete opposite of what someone should feel at that age. But that's how the first encounter was. Of course, I remember it happened while I was in the bathroom. I had brushed my teeth and the door was open. And at one point I looked in the mirror and saw that next to me, by the shower, there was a man standing. Needless to say, he wasn't a member of the family. I turned to that side and he wasn't there. I looked back at the mirror and he had disappeared. Obviously, I ran out to look for my mom. She went to the bathroom, checked everything, and of course that man wasn't there. But the strange thing was that she didn't seem surprised. At least I have that memory. I never stopped seeing him. Maybe he would pass by the side behind me, or I would just see his shadow when I woke up. And even though there hadn't been any kind of aggression up to that point, it was impossible for me not to be scared. Another issue was that my parents argued a lot, and mainly my mom was always the one who reproached him for what he had done with the guy from Corrientes. That was the big phrase I always heard, but I never really understood it because I simply didn't know what my dad had done. My older sister suffered but stayed distant from my parents, and it happened once. I don't recall my age, but she admitted she saw the man and his shadow too, and she was very clear about something. She asked me, please, to try not to look at him, not to get close, and never to interact with him. Of course, I didn't understand why she was telling me this. And then, years later, when this entity started calling me by my name, I realized why she told me that. Something bad happened. Something was behind it, Mom. A key detail was that everyone in the house, regardless of clothes, season, or location, woke up with a burning bruise or scratch. They often lasted for days and usually appeared on my upper back or legs. It was something horrible because we didn't understand how this entity managed to do this without us noticing. And what's more, today, after all the years that have passed, I have a very faint mark on my back, almost unnoticeable, that this entity gave me back then. But the craziest thing is that almost every night it burns a lot for a few minutes and then it calms down. I went to 4 dermatologists to check this out, and none of them could solve this issue. It's pretty strange. And over the years, the family got worse in every way. We lived together, but we didn't function like a normal family. If that's even real. There were many fights, jealousy, and broken promises. For example, I never vacationed with my parents, and it wasn't due to money. They had a good income. We lived in Acassuso, in our own house, so that wasn't the problem. I think the key was that they just weren't interested in spending time together. And always, in every argument, it was repeated over and over again, always, a phrase about the guy from Concordia. I finally found out what it was about. My sister told me, my mom confirmed it, and it was my dad who got furious when he found out that In every fight it was repeated over and over, and in every fight it was repeated again and again. The thing was that the deal didn't just involve my life, my family's was at stake too. That is to say, apparently my dad. And to make it easier to understand, he used the whole family as collateral, even his own life, just so I could be born. And this is crazy. No matter how you look at it, maybe for many people it might even seem like a fantasy that we all live together. But not because I started seeing this entity, this man, this shadow, without knowing anything about what had happened. No one ever told me about this. Everything was always kept secret until those years when the attacks themselves and my curiosity forced everything to come to light. My sister doesn't want to talk about this these days. She confessed to me many times that she saw this man as her shadow and also started seeing him without knowing anything about what my dad had done. Then she found out. The thing was that at a certain point in our house, we couldn't be at peace. It was practically impossible to sleep because of the noises we heard. It was typical to feel like plates and glasses were falling and breaking on the kitchen floor, but when my parents checked, there was nothing and everything was normal. This is something I never understood. When I was almost 13, we all slept in my parents' bedroom because we literally couldn't take it anymore. We were exhausted from not being able to get any sleep even for a few hours. I still remember the smells that came out of nowhere, putrid smells that made your eyes burn. But the most critical part was when my dad came back to Corrientes one morning. Just like that, he got up, got in the car, and without telling anyone anything, he left at night. He only called on the phone to talk to my mom, let her know, and tell her that supposedly he would talk to this man to solve everything. If he had managed to do the job, he also knew how to undo it. The thing was that my dad, 2 days later, was at home. His mood was terrible. He looked tired, sad, and irritable. He was in a bad state, avoided everyone, and stayed that way for about a week. On July 5th, 3 days before my birthday, my dad asked me that afternoon to go with him to my grandparents' house. They had passed away and the house was empty. We planned to get a television since ours was broken. I never imagined that afternoon would become the worst nightmare of my entire life, one that, as I told you, still haunts me to this day. We got in the car for the drive to the house in Lanús, and during the whole trip, which was about an hour or so, we went in complete silence. My old man and I stayed silent, not out of respect, but because I was afraid of him. He never hit me or treated me badly, but the way he was so strange that it really confused me. We arrived around 6:30 in the evening at night and went in. My old man locked the door, and once we were inside, he asked me to sit on the couch because he had to talk to me about something. We were sitting there. The image is so stuck in my head that it feels like it was yesterday. He looked me in the eyes with an expression of resignation, fear, something like that, and he said this sentence to me. "I know that because of me you went through some really tough times, son, but I want you to know that today it all ends, and I'm doing this for you, Mom and Kata." I couldn't even ask him what it was about, why he said that, or tell him that he didn't have to apologize to me for anything. When he finished speaking, he was sitting on the couch about a meter in front of me in my grandparents' former house. He drew his weapon in under a second, he was a carrier, and ended it all. I'll keep the details to myself because there's not much point in explaining them. I left home and went to my neighbor for help. She recognized me, opened the door immediately, listened, called the police, informed my mom, and tried unsuccessfully to calm me. That afternoon, my dad died instantly in front of me in the worst way. And the question is, why did he do this? Because obviously he had taken the secret with him, but not because only several years later I found out something. He had left a letter for my mom telling her that his decision was based on what he talked about with this sorcerer from Corrientes the last time he saw him. He said it was the only way to get rid of the entity stalking us. Paradoxically, the one who was responsible for me being born was supposedly the one who wanted me dead, but if not, my old man's life served as a guarantee, or maybe someone else from our family, in any way possible, because her real goal wasn't to protect anyone, but to take possession of a soul and its energy. The target or prize was always me, but the guarantee, as I said at the beginning, was my family and my dad, who was the one who started it all. He took on the responsibility of ending that contract, if that's what you can call it, so I see it more as an act of love. My mom was so shocked that she searched for this man and reported him for influencing my dad's outcome. And the truth is, since there was no evidence at all, nothing came of it. The man continued his life, but from what we heard, he moved to Brazil soon after. So, from the day this happened in our house, this entity, this man, never showed up again, and we never suffered any kind of attack again either. The noises and smells completely stopped. It was a very, very sudden change in every way. There are two very curious facts. That weekend, when my dad went to Corrientes before I was born, my mom felt a discomfort in her belly like never before in her life, and according to her, she only confessed this years after my dad's death. That same night, she also had a horrible dream. There was this entity, which we later saw at home, that approached her belly and whispered something she couldn't understand. We assumed then that it was that time when that sorcerer summoned this entity. If it hadn't happened, nothing else I'm describing could have occurred. This is also more recent. My dad is in a family mausoleum at La Chacarita Cemetery. I've visited him several times. Not out of affection, since, as I said, our relationship wasn't like a typical father-son bond. Out of respect, since thanks to him, I can share what happened to us today. It's really striking that when you approach the mausoleum, even more so if you go inside, you feel it, and this happened to me every time I went. That putrid smell we used to feel at home regularly, the same acidic one that makes your eyes and nose burn. This is strange, since it's been 20 years since his death. And of course, any smells that could be produced would happen at the beginning. Today it would be impossible, but that smell is always there whenever you go, as if reminding you that his soul, unfortunately, has an owner. I insist that even though all of this may seem like some kind of family paranoia, there are certain aspects, coincidences and details that confirm, at least to my family and me, that everything that happened to us was the result of what my dad did that time with this sorcerer in Corrientes. Thanks for making it to the end. It would be great to know what you think about this case, which undoubtedly involves a lot of issues that are extremely delicate. Goodbye for now. See you in a few days. Sending a big hug to everyone. Bye.